We are live.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, wherever you are.
Hey. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing really well, thanks. How are you doing?
Very good, very good.
Good.
And yeah, we have, I think actually there were three messages, I think, to go over today in open class. Thanks everybody for submitting.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, I think sometimes, we forget to do our behind the scenes, share everybody like the journey of like what's happening with the school and everything. And I think we now have, I'm really excited. Actually, we have graduated 3 coaches, which was a little while back, but now we have a new batch of 3 certification students. And we have, I actually don't really know exactly. I think we have like 3 pretty active members in our self-coaching group, but we have a total of maybe 7 members or something like that. So that's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely growing, and it's great interaction going on. I was covering this week, and it was really, really rewarding, to hear just to read the comments and offer any guidance. And there's just so much thought work that's going on that you can really tell they're just making so much progress. It's great. Just love it.
Yeah, and that's what it was so amazing to me too this week, was seeing how members who've been there, or students who've been there for a while, were sort of sharing with newer students. And I realized, when you set up these membership sites, you can do it in different ways. A lot of times it is batches. Like we have a batch starting in this month, that, which I'm sure there's some benefits with that. But the nice thing with the way we do it with kind of the open enrollment is that instead of becoming like a class, like a class, like one class, then it becomes like a Montessori school, the Montessori method,
Yeah, my kids actually went through Montessori. So
oh, really?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
My kids went to Montessori for for pre-K, and it was cool how the older kids teach the younger kids, etc. And our school kind of becomes like that, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, I never thought about that, but that's exactly right. Yeah, it's so rewarding, to see that interaction going on.
Very cool. And then before we start talking about questions here, you texted me something yesterday. I thought it was really cool to talk about, like you're thinking of actually focusing more on this work.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. So I don't know if any of you know, but I'm a college professor, and I'm a program director on the side. It's all online and everything. But I kind of decided to kind of scale down a little on that, focus more on the school. It's just a personal / professional decision, and I'm really excited about it because I just love the school. It's just so rewarding, and you don't get that kind of personal growth and reward very easily. And the school definitely is a place where I found that. And so, yeah, I'm just super excited. Just kind of shared it with you yesterday. Just want to let you know what I'm thinking, just want to share it, everything. And so, I'm just really excited to just, be more involved, and really, really great stuff going on here at the school.
Absolutely. And I went down with, it was kind of because of COVID too, but I'm a 70% employee now, and I love my job. Anybody hears this from my job, I love it and everything. Yeah. But I think at some point, yes, I do also want to do like this sleep coaching full time. I really do. And I think that will happen in the not so distant future.
And I think there's such a huge need, you and I have both been in the clinical realm for a while, and there's definitely progress made here at the school that you don't really see in other areas.
And it's still, coaching is still such a wonderful field, because there is no gap between you, the coach, and your client. It's just I'm a client and I hire you as a coach, and we work together, which is so wonderful and so liberating. Just one little thing is documentation. How like in the clinical world, you spend, let's say, 15 minutes sitting in front of a patient talking to them, and then you have to leave them, and then you have to write down all the things you talked about, which is kind of like, so it's kind of like dreaming, that whole thing, right? With it was coaching, it's like we had a conversation, and we recorded it on a video, and now it's available, or we sent the message, and now here you go. It's all like the teaching and the documentation is just one thing.
Right. And those, frequent interactions, like, with your clients on BedTyme, or our school clients, on Slack, it's like that quick interaction, so someone's not left hanging like, oh, I have an
Yes.
appointment in 3 weeks, so I have to remember
Yeah.
to write this down and ask the question. And it's not a great platform, the traditional kind of route with chronic sleep problems. And
Not ideal.
you were talking yesterday about sleep apnea, and that's more of like lends itself better a little bit more to that traditional side of things, because it's not really a chronic condition per se. It can be
And
like
it's not,
easily remedied.
emotion and thought management is
Right.
not really part of it.
Right.
So
Not a
much.
lot of thought work with sleep apnea.
Yeah.
No, not a lot of thought work.
No, it just reminded me of my old program director. He was like, I don't know in what context, but he would like, we were talking about, should we treat or should we not treat, like with sleep apnea. His saying was always like, his name is Babak Makalisi. He said always like, when in doubt, pressurize the snout.
Pressurize the snout. When in doubt, yeah.
Just put it on and see what happens. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go over some questions. As usual, no medical advice here, just general thoughts and questions. We hope will help anyone that tunes in. I will share my screen here, and I think we actually have our first question is actually from kind of one of your favorite topics, or a topic you talk a lot about. What did I do? I did something wrong. Hold on, I shared the wrong thing. Oh, no, I'm gonna stop this, stop that, and I'm gonna add to screen, and I'm going to hit Chrome tab instead. Oh, there we go. Okay, so the first one is from Pat. Let me read this. Pat says, hi, Daniel and Michael. Again, hi, Pat. I was wondering if at some point you might talk about sleep and how it might change as you age. So instead of thinking of your sleep as a problem, maybe it's just a normal part of aging. I'm 62, and many people in my age group complain of fragmented sleep, more wakefulness. Thanks as always. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, it's true. There are changes in sleep, and it's logical, right? There's changes in everything about the way we function in our physiology. So of course there's changes with sleep. The first of all, just the big message is that the changes that happen with sleep do not mean you're going to develop insomnia. It doesn't mean that. And that's the big message. All right. So just everybody, yes, your sleep changes, but it doesn't have to be a problem. It doesn't have to be something you get anxious about, and that you don't have to go down that insomnia path. So, some changes I think are, and I don't have a textbook in front of me, but I'm just, from what I understand, your circadian rhythm changes a bit as you age, and that kind of that drive, that the sleep drive, wake drive kind of thing, it can kind of start to kind of go a little bit less circadian, I guess. Circadian means like about a day, about 24 hours. So you might develop like that afternoon drowsiness might get a little bit stronger as you move into your elderly years. The nighttime wakefulness might get a little bit more as you move into your elderly years. There's theories why, the circadian rhythm changes. Maybe the pineal gland calcifies a little bit or something like that. They don't really, your melatonin production might be a little bit less. It doesn't mean that if you take melatonin, you're not going to get insomnia. That's, it's like, that's not ever been shown. So I think just simply understanding that things change a little bit in every way, you just kind of keep the same ideas going. You keep the same ideas that if you're awake at night, you're enjoying your time. You're never trying to force sleep in any way. You work with yourself, how you feel. So if you feel like a little sleepier in the afternoon in your elderly years, maybe the nap thing becomes a regular thing. Perfectly fine. You're keeping sleep in the right context. It's not something you ever try to force. So that same message, just it's true all through life, and including as you age. So, other things that just kind of can make sleep a little bit challenging at times might be other ailments that a person has. We've talked about how almost anything can kind of disrupt your sleep a little bit. So you always just want to be working on those on the side. Like if you have some condition that's associated with you aging, you're working with your doctor to kind of make sure that's not a big problem. And you're doing what you can to take care of yourself in that way. Medications to treat other things can become more common as people move into their elderly years. Also, some things like, people retire and they kind of then they can get a bit of that, like hang out in bed a little bit longer, go to bed a little earlier, sleep in. and that kind of increased opportunity can sometimes kind of make insomnia kind of become a little more likely. So, just it's the same messages. It's the same messages. That everything we teach on the school here is really all you need to understand to make sure that insomnia doesn't become an issue as you age.
Absolutely. And I'll just add to that, that I think you're absolutely right, Pat. And I think I think it is true that like our sleep need tends to go down a little bit. Like we need maybe a little bit less sleep as we are older. Sleep does get more fragmented, exactly as you say. Taking naps and being up a little bit more awake becomes the same. But exactly as Coach Michael says, your relationship with being awake at night and sleep doesn't need to change. You can have enjoy life, enjoy everything, even if sleep is a little bit different, So cool. Let's move ahead and talk about our next question. Add to stream. This is from Jones. Hello, I've been going through it for the last couple of weeks. I don't know if it's normal. I don't know what's going on with me. I don't get tired or sleepy. My body doesn't let me know when I'm tired or when it is time to go to bed or sleep. I yawn constantly over and over. It just doesn't stop. I literally have to force myself in bed, close my eyes. I don't drift off to sleep or anything like that. I feel like I'm constantly awake with my eyes closed to try to relax or imagine things, but I don't know what's wrong. It just doesn't seem to work. I just picture images. I try and try until I finally open my eyes. It feels like I was awake and not asleep the whole entire time. Hours already passed by as if I was sleeping, but I don't feel like I've been sleeping. I'm up and can't sleep. I try to go to bed early, but I'm up for hours and hours until I force myself to lay in bed. And I feel as I really lost my ability to sleep forever. I'm so scared, really worried. Hope my thalamus is not damaged or anything. I'm only 28 years old. It's my fault. It's my fault sleeping so much and working nice shifts, not sleeping. I damaged my body. I don't think I'm sleeping anymore. I need help. I'm scared. Nothing puts me to sleep anymore. This was from Jones. Several things here that are important. I think firstly, Jones, that this is one of those you can hear that Jones is scared, and we're of course sorry to hear this. But there are a lot of things here that actually are what we, I'm sure you agree with me, Michael, that there's a lot of things here that are sort of quote unquote low hanging fruit. There are things that I think they're just little things that someone like yourself, Jones, could understand and then see actually see a big difference in sleep when you understand those. So as I take some time to think a little bit. I'll let you start, Michael. What are your immediate
Sure. Well, the first, and Jones, hang in there. The fact that this started a couple weeks ago, that actually kind of bodes well. That you're gonna get through this. I heard the word try a lot in that email. And that's just a huge message. You can't force your sleep. Trying is kind of the word that we use when you talk about, initiating something willfully. You try to make something happen. It can't be done with sleep. And that's really where a lot of the frustration and anxiety happens, exactly with the efforts. We call all these things efforts. And so I think one thing that's kind of helpful is when people change the words they use to talk about something. It can actually change your attitude about the thing that you're talking about. And I like to subtract or replace, I should say, the word try with allow. I think allow is the word that better kind of encapsulates the approach you have to take to sleep. It acknowledges that you can't willfully make sleep happen. When you say, I'm going to allow myself to get sleepy, it's like, that's not a direct thing that you're doing. You're just acknowledging that something has the possibility of happening. You can get in the way of it. You can get in the way of sleep. You can make yourself stressed, talking to someone or reading something or whatever. And that anxiety can just be so overwhelming that, you're going to get in the way of sleep. You're not allowing yourself to get sleepy. So, really natural, enjoyable, simple things at night, I think, are really a good approach for allowing sleep to have a chance of happening. Because allow doesn't mean it will. It just means you're not applying effort to it. So that's the big thing I got, and it's sort of a change in thinking, a change in approach with your sleep, which is ultimately how insomnia kind of goes away. From there, you can go into specific things that just, help you enjoy the time at night. So you're not Google searching horrible things, and you're not, trying to figure out insomnia and trying all the tricks and gimmicks. They don't work. They're just going to make it worse. So, that's just kind of my thoughts when I first read through that email.
Absolutely. I think this message here lends itself to kind of like the real fundamental teaching, which is, I like this one. If you, Jones, or anybody else out there, if you imagine a friend of yours who sleeps really, really well, and you ask them, what do you do to sleep so well? They'll go, I don't know. And that is really the key. Like, when you're not trying, sleep comes easy. So that's the kind of most fundamental truth there, is that the more you try to sleep, the less sleep you get. And for someone like Jones here, you can see, like, Jones really literally says, I try. And then when you see, like, the more I try, the less I'll sleep. Maybe if I try a little less, things will go. And then this magical things can happen. Like, you just try a little less and you say, oh, I slept more. And then you're in this virtuous cycle. So I think that was like the big one. But I want to talk about two other things. One, which I coincidentally just made a video about, an Insomnia Insight video about this week, which is the Bermuda Triangle effect, which is basically a version of the Houdini effect. So for anyone that's new here to the channel, we think like, what the heck is this guy talking about? This is kind of crazy, but nothing strange here. Here's the thing. When we are awake, our bodies become like more and more in need of sleep. Just like when we don't eat, we become more hungry with time. And that sleep drive, the need for the body to sleep, is known as, it's experienced as sleepiness, But here's the thing. When we have the break in our sleep system, kind of the safety stop in it, the thing that makes us not sleep sometimes, we call that hyperarousal. When that hyperarousal is going, you don't experience sleepiness. You're sort of anxious and on edge. And it seems like the sleepiness has disappeared, but that's not really the case. It's that you're just like worried. You're worried, and you have that underlying worry over time. So you just don't feel sleepy. And it seems like the sleepiness has disappeared, but it's not that. It's just the worry that kind of is masking it.
Yeah,
we call this the Bermuda Triangle effect. The other thing, and I actually remember one more thing actually quickly here. Such a very common thought is like, I've done something to damage my brain, my thalamus, my thing. But, that is such a common concern, but that's really not where insomnia comes from. You can't damage your brain so you get insomnia. But if you think you've damaged your brain, you may very well have insomnia, right? So just knowing that this is a super common concern, and that is not the thing. And then finally, I want to talk about actually time traveling, which is very common too. And this is where, Jones says, sometimes I just lay my eyes and I kind of try to force myself to sleep, and I open them again, and like several hours have passed, but I don't think I slept. You probably did sleep, but in that hyper-aroused state, you don't even recognize it. Your brain is so alert that it just like doesn't feel like you sleep. We call that time traveling. So yeah, those are my big ones. Anything to add to that, Michael?
No, I think that's really good. I was sort of talking about how you can get in the way of your own sleep. And absolutely, the main way that people with insomnia get in the way of their own sleep is through their thoughts. And the worry about consequences of not sleeping, the worry about how their day is going to be, how their terrible things might happen if I don't sleep. All these kinds of thought patterns really is the way, that's the main thing. That's the main part of the gas brake models. The main brake is the hyperarousal and associated thoughts about sleep that are, not accurate, but they're easy to develop because worry and anxiety about sleep can happen, and it can happen quickly. And sounds like it did in this case. And so, it's a thought change. It really is kind of ultimately what it boils down to, and you'll get there. You'll get there.
Absolutely. All right, Jones, thank you so much. Let us know how things go. And with that, we'll move on to next one. Oh, this is from Lucie. So this was a long email that I've actually cut down a little bit, Lucie, so we could, I think, get to the most important points. But let's read this. Dear Daniel, my name is Lucie. I recently found your channel. It kind of saved my life. Thank you so much for that encouragement. Super happy you found it. Let me explain. Since around October, I'm struggling with immense health anxiety. It all started when I read about leukemia on the internet. I read a lot of case reports, started experiencing a lot of symptoms on myself, bruises, sweating, muscle pain. I was so convinced that I had this. I wasn't able to go to school anymore. I took a blood test. My doctors said everything was fine. But after a while, I started overthinking, what if they got my results wrong? And here I kind of jumped to another section. The anxiety is the problem, not the disease. You could replace the disease with any other disease. It doesn't matter. The anxiety remains anxiety. I just want to put that out there really quick. So everyone who has health anxiety will remember it and believe in it. You can go through this. And then another jump here. Anyway, so I still was worried about the mad cow disease because I Googled so much about mad cow disease. I came across the other prion diseases here. And there was, but I remember a name, fatal familial insomnia. I thought, no, you're not going to Google it. You can't sleep because of Red Bull. You don't have this. But I think she still did. It's if I also came up and I got even more scared, but gladly I found your channel and your videos about it, realized that I was not alone. I kind of got over that thought of the disease, slept better the days after. But 2 weeks ago, this fear started to crawl back. I tried to get rid of it, but it stayed. I hope you can share my story in a video. I hope you can share a little bit more thoughts on the theme. I'm glad I found you in your community, and I hope you can help me. I will stay strong. And many greetings from Lucie. Thanks so much, Lucie, for sending us this, this message. And I have a couple of thoughts here. Actually, I can start with this one, Michael.
Yeah, go ahead.
I kind of thought about this beforehand, and there were two. I think the first thing I want to really talk about is what I call opposition research. And by the way, everything we talk about here, all these kind of concepts and things I write down, are part of our school of thought, our philosophy, which we call natto, non-attachment to the outcome, which is kind of a mix of like CBT and acceptance and other things. And I've almost finished my book on this, which you can read more about opposition research, for example. But anyway, here's the thing. Something that really puzzled me initially in my journey here was that, so many of my clients, they really Googled, like really went there, like spent whole hours and hours like reading about insomnia and how it affected this, how it affected that, etc. And to me, it was kind of strange because it was sort of obvious to me that that wasn't helpful. It's like, how, that obvious to me, it's like, that's going to make you more anxious. So kind of, why are you doing this? And often the clients themselves were like, I know, but I just can't help it. And I didn't understand it until I sort of realized that this is what I now call opposition research. So basically, if you think in the kind of regular world, let's say when you're facing like tangible problems, let's say you are a wrestler and you're going to have a wrestling match, then it makes actually perfect sense to learn everything you can about that opponent you're going to face. How do they move? How do they attack? Because that makes you safe and you know exactly what to do. So in that case, opposition research is perfect. And that is where it comes from. When you have trouble sleeping, you feel like, oh, there is kind of an enemy, an opponent. There's a problem there. And the more I learn about it, the more I can defend myself and keep safe. But again, it's not actually a real tangible physical threat here. It's a perceived threat. You're afraid of being awake, which is not really, it's not a real threat. It's just like an idea. So researching it comes from that place of kind of opposition research, but it doesn't actually make sense because there is no opponent. But when you're researching an opponent, it seems like there is an opponent. So, but I just want to put it out there that this is why this phenomenon occurs. And when you just understand that, you can actually easier say, oh, I'm going to Google this. And you're like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm trying to do this opposition research, and that's actually not helpful. So I think I'll do something else instead. So just understanding that, I think, is really, really helpful. So that was kind of number one here. And then I want to talk about like when fear gets sticky. But before I do, any comments on the opposition research, Michael?
No, I think you're exactly right. I like your wrestler, analogy there. That's a real thing, right? It's a real thing, and life is full of examples where we do a lot of opposition research before you embark on something to keep yourself safe and to make sure things go well as best as possible. But insomnia, as like Sasha said, it's a thing, but it's not a thing. It's a paradox. It's an experience that's the result of a pattern of thinking. That's kind of what most ongoing insomnia is. And so if you're doing opposition research, it's almost like you're chasing a phantom in a way. You're trying to come up with, things that you can do specifically to solve the problem. And there aren't specific things that you can do. it's not possible. Nobody can do a specific thing to make themselves sleep. You know, I like to joke. I'm like, if somebody figures that out, they're going to be living on their own island. We can all go home and everything is solved. That's not going to happen. Okay. I've been in this field for 30 plus years. I've read all kinds of stuff about sleep and I've just been really into it. How is it going to happen? It's not, you know, it's always going to be a thing that some people are going to struggle with, but you have to understand sleep. You have to understand how thinking drives insomnia. And you have to then start to allow yourself to be awake, allow yourself to experience negative thoughts. And just by allowing that to happen, you start to then learn, you teach yourself, you know, how you should think about your sleep. And then when you get those thinking changes, those thought pattern changes, then things usually start to turn the corner and get better. So those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to spin off of that a little bit before we go over some live comments here. Chasing a phantom. Yeah. And the thing with that is, like, if you are chasing a phantom, it seems that there's a phantom out there that you should be chasing. So just the mere act of like trying to sort of chase a phantom makes it seem like there is a phantom. You know, that's very important. And it's similar to this one, where another analogy I'm starting to use is like when you have, like, let's say a celebrity, there's like some rumor about a celebrity and they're like, no, I'm going to call a press conference to debunk this myth and deny all these things. Then they call a press conference and they're like, this didn't happen. Then you're like, whoa, if they're doing so much work denying this, must be something there. It's kind of like a little bit of the same thing. Like the more you try to, like, I'm going to prove that this isn't happening, then there must be, you know, very similar to thought pattern.
Yep. Absolutely.
Let's see here. We have a couple of live comments here. Owner says, very true. Hyperarousal masks fatigue. When you finally realize it, come down from the arousal, it is there. Exactly. It is still there. That in itself, calming enough to feel the fatigue, is positive. Even if you can't sleep, realizing the fatigue is a great step. It has been for me. It's an important one, because a lot of people, when they understand sleep, I understand what's going on, they become less hyper-aroused, they start feeling tired, and they often go like, why is this happening? I'm feeling more tired and I'm sleeping more. It's exactly as Orner says. Yeah. Very important point.
Yeah.
We have Neil here from Israel.
Hey, Neil.
Hey guys, a question that is in my mind last few days. While I had some trouble falling asleep, not worried about it anymore. It will be all right as always. But I was wondering, how come nobody knew how to deal with insomnia 20, 15, 10 years ago? The fear over these years grew so much that it makes more time to the sleep-related thought change. I think what Neil, correct me if I'm wrong, but what Neil saying here is that I'm not particularly worried right now. But if I had known about what we talk about here like 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't be in this spot where I have to do sort of quite a lot of thought work to not be so scared. So why weren't these thoughts available 20 years ago, Michael?
Well, I'm old enough to remember. I guess I would say that, CBTI, when it was first coming into its own kind of in the 60s and 70s, was really pretty groundbreaking. Because a lot of the medications to treat people with insomnia and anxiety and all that, they were kind of dangerous. They weren't like the safest drugs in the world. And so when CBTI was kind of coming into its own, it was really, really a big change. It was really this could be really good. Unfortunately, it didn't fizzle out. It just kind of met a lot of barriers, a lot of resistance. And there's all kinds of theories why that, so I won't go into that. But it was really something that people in the sleep field knew that, like, this was really the best approach. If you have insomnia, you should do this. But it required a lot of time, and maybe that wasn't really available for different providers to offer, or for people to access, and all this kind of stuff. Anyways, and then then the 90s were the whole Ambien thing, and that was a big, it's gonna, like, everyone's gonna sleep great, and then all these problems started to be uncovered with that. But then then social media came in, and so I think social media was probably really the start of Neil, to kind of get to your question. What happened? It was social media which kind of led to the wider availability of coaching and things like that, where people could talk about this, and then people started to realize, like, oh, this insomnia thing can be, it's better addressed through thought work. Once you get the initial behavioral stuff down, the initial behavioral stuff is pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of figuring out. You just kind of like set it and forget it, that sort of idea. But then it's the thinking thing. And that, I think, with social media really kind of came into its own. And I think that's why, Neil, that I think that's how I'd answer that question. I think that's the way I saw kind of things progress. I mean, I got in the field like in the mid 80s. I wasn't in it in the 70s, but I read a lot about how CBTI kind of got started. And yeah, so that's just some comments there.
No, that was great. I think that was a very good, like, historic look back. And I think that is super true. It's like the democratization of media is making this available now, because ultimately, like, CBTI, I agree with you. I think the problem with CBTI is it became too focused maybe on like kind of behavioral change rather than education, but the education was always there. And if you look even further historically, like the whole idea that, if something is troubling you, then the more you try to escape it, the more problems you have. If you sort of go the other person, you do better. That is really not new at all, right? You can read about like Buddhist texts from like 2,000 years where that's there. But I think the combination of understanding that insomnia is similar to those type of experiences and social media, 100%.
Yeah, and most people now, their experience when they bring up sleeping difficulties to their doctor, the doctor rules out sleep apnea or anything else, a rare narcolepsy case once in a while, that kind of stuff. And then here's some sleep hygiene tips. And if those don't work, we'll try some medications.
Yeah.
That's usually the way it goes. And you probably can confirm that. And I feel for these doctors, because they don't have much time to help a person, with chronic conditions. And so I feel for them. Like, I think a lot of them know, like, this isn't the best approach, but it's what I can do right now. Exactly. And I get it. I get all that. But really, it can sometimes perpetuate the problem and even make it worse.
All right. I guess we can kind of finish off here, Neil. As I say, the reason is drug companies wanted to increase profits. Basically, you can't. Yeah, I think there's truth to this. Maybe. That drug companies, they're obviously for profit. They want to sell as much stuff as possible. But I don't think they are to blame for, like, they didn't create this. Really, it's more like I think it's really the demand that's creating the supply, if you will. But that's true also. It's hard to sell education, and that's why I'm excited. I have a lot of clients actually on my app, and we have clients on our sleep coach school, which proves to me that you can sell education. You can do that, and I don't mean that to come out as like from a selfish perspective, but it is like, unless you can sell education, nobody's gonna offer it. So it has to be commercially doable for people to really build companies around selling education. And yes, you cannot put education, compassion, support, guidance in a pill. It's not possible, and that's what you need.
Yeah, well said.
All right, Neil says makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. I said absolutely about myself, but I'm just saying everything you talk about makes sense. I love the discussion. D-Max says, hey guys, I'm in a stage of my recovery where I seem to always wake up as soon as the sun starts to come up, no matter what time I fall asleep. Is this common for insomnia recovery? I say yes. I think I have a name for this somewhere. It's kind of like what I call a awakening, which is like you wake up at the same time always, like it's kind of like a clock switch. And I think the way I think about this is that I'm not surprised at all. It's, our internal body clock can get into these patterns. So my favorite example is that when you have an alarm set for 7, let's say, then you often find yourself waking up like 6:55, 6:57, like right before the alarm goes off, you kind of wake up. It just shows that your body can get into various rhythms. And this is a common one. I would say it's nothing surprising, nothing strange. And I think you seem to be, on this journey. And I think don't let this derail you. You're on a good path. Just kind of don't pay attention to this one and you'll do fine.
Yeah. And I think, waking with the sunrise, I think is very natural. So, I'm kind of like more power to you,
Yeah, exactly. That's probably a good time. Usually a good time to wake up. DMX says, this sounds like progress. I'm doing better. Perfect. Super happy to hear that. And thanks for sharing. And I think, we have some more live things from Uner, which I think we'll have time to get back to. But first, let us go back to our question actually from Lucy. There was one more thing I wanted to really point out that I think was important, which was this one. Lucy said, I try to get, okay, 2 weeks ago, this fear started to crawl back. I try to get rid of it, but it stayed. I think that to me is extremely important, because Lucy is in a position where she kind of cognitively realizes that I don't have mad cow disease. I don't have fatal insomnia, but the fear of it keeps coming back and she can't get rid of it. And there you have it again. It is actually the very, very same thing with insomnia, anxiety, all of it is the same. It is the unpleasant emotion of fear is something nobody wants to experience. And that's the whole rationale for fear. It's supposed to make us fight, flight, get away, right? That's why we have fear. It's supposed to make you really uncomfortable. But when the fear in itself becomes the problem, when you're like, I don't want to have fear. I should get rid of this fear. How can I get rid of this fear? You're trying to escape an emotion. And emotions, when you try to escape them, they become really sticky. It's basically the brain is saying to you, something is wrong with you. And that creates fear. And then you go like, there's nothing wrong with me. I want to get away. I don't want to hear it. Then the brain's like, there's really something wrong with you. Listen, 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 listen. And then the fear gets stronger. So it's the same thing again. When you try to escape the fear, that's when it really gets the grip on you. When you go like, okay, I'm willing to experience this fear. I'm going to listen to what you're saying, brain, and I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to maybe write everything down, maybe do a little journaling or something like that. That's when things get really good.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Looking like reading about every little possible detail about a disease is really a slippery slope, because, you know, you're going to come across things that could really be true with anybody, you know, when you're reading every little tiny bit of detail about like SFI or something like that. And it's, you have to, I think it's like you were just saying, you know, recognizing that you're having these thoughts, maybe writing a few things down during the day, I think is helpful. You know, looking at things pretty objectively, I think is a great path to go down.
And don't escape, and you'll do really good. All right, let's see. Owner says, I was prescribed mirtazapine, trazodone, hydroxyzine, and I slept better without anything. Sedation isn't sleep, but sometimes I drop the hammer. Okay, but those drugs address hyperarousal in my view. That's the value of last resort. I try not to use them at all. Maybe some night out of 30, if things get dire, I agree. Education is most effective. That's 100%. And you know, this is something I want to talk about next week probably, which I call it's kind of a new analogy I'm working on, which I call the cave. Let's write this down. And so when you have, like, we often talk about the grizzly bear, like, you know, the grizzly bear is this thing you try to escape, which your mind is a little confused and it thinks that being awake at night is like a threat, and that's insomnia, let's say. But sometimes, like, a common objection I get from people is like, well, sometimes escaping actually is good for me. I find that when I take this medication or when I really exercise a lot, I do actually sleep better. So that actually does work. And then that's tricky, because to me, that means that you have tried to escape the grizzly bear and you found a cave where you feel safe now. You know, you're taking this medication and you kind of feel like you have some control, which feels good. There's no question whatsoever that feels good. But the problem is you haven't truly addressed the root problem, which is that you still think that there's a grizzly bear out there. You still think there's something you need to do. So you're in the cave. And sometimes, like in Owner's case, it doesn't seem to have become a big problem, because Owner understands this and he is sort of venturing out and facing the bear more and more, and he's on the right path. But being in that cave can become really problematic, because if you feel like, I feel safe now as long as I take this, eventually, you know, you're going to have some stress and you're still not going to sleep. And then it's like, oh my gosh, the grizzly bear found me even in my cave. Now I have to find another cave or go deeper inside the cave, right? And finally, the cave becomes like this prison, you know? And that's really why I think, you know, it's very tricky. Looking for safety is what you want to do, but it can get you into a place where you don't want to be, which, Owner, it doesn't seem like you're there, but I just want to, you know, talk about this.
Yeah, the cave's a really good analogy. And it's really just the brain trying to protect you because of something you think is true, like the bear. So, you know, it's you just want to be really careful. You know, every once in a while, doing something to escape it, it can turn into an ongoing thing, and that's, you know, on one hand, it's like maybe a small potato, maybe because it's just once or whatever, but it's like, it's almost like it's a small potato that's still in the ground growing, you know?
Right.
And so you want to like, just be mindful of that. And, don't change your PO box to the cave. You know, you want to just say, okay, every once in a while this happens, probably not a big deal, but don't live there,
Yeah, exactly.
and the way to do it is to just be really objective about these thoughts, and just I think during the day is the time to address them. And this is where some coaches kind of go in they differ in opinions about this, but I think it's journaling during the day. I think it's helpful because it's like you're thinking a little more clearly. You know, it's light out. There's other people maybe that you can talk to if you need to, instead of like middle of the night, you're not sleeping. You know, you're really panicky and all that. If that scenario is happening, I don't think that's the time to really start trying to objectively address your thoughts. It's kind of like just hang in there, get through the night, and the next day maybe sit down, have a cup of tea, get a piece of paper, and write some things down. And just that simple act, I've seen it be so helpful for so many people to kind of assess how they're really thinking about things.
Absolutely. And I think maybe owner has some more questions, but I think you led us in a very nice direction here. We talked about the cave, and that's important, but also about like, if you sometimes take a medication, so what? It's not a big deal. Like, you don't have to judge yourself for it or make it a big deal. Like, oh my gosh, I took it again, I shouldn't have done that. Absolutely not. Like, self-kindness, is always the best. No pressure. All right. Omar says, I was in the cave and your channel has helped me face the issue. I love this. So happy to hear this.
That's great to hear.
Many common themes in mind: freak out, big one, gradual, calm down, education, drugs. I finally, once I let it go, progress. I see. You can see from what owner writes here that he's been on the channel, learning a lot,
doing some thought work, and that's great, owner. That's how you get there.
This is a perfect way to finish off here, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah. Great questions.
And I will say this. I'll do a little advertising here. Anyone who wants to work using an app and text back and forth, etc. We have BedTyme, on the App Store, and then of course we also have me and Coach Michael's self-coaching program. Check it out on our website. We would love to work with you if you need some extra support and guidance and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, you're heading over to drop-in class now, right?
Yeah, it's starting a little under half an hour, and with our members, and so we're gonna have some great interactions. Really looking forward to it.
It's gonna be amazing. All right, everyone. Have a nice weekend.
Take care, everybody. Thanks.